Hi, welcome to the Old Geezer's Diary. My name's Chris, and welcome also to the third and final part of my little memoir, if you like, about my time on a pirate radio station in the North Sea. That was Radio Tower, and it was on Sunkhead Tower, 11 miles out from Clacton-on-Sea, Frinton, etc. And it was quite a lonely and strange place to be. I'd spent a few weeks on board with a team of other people. That was DJs Dave Simpson and Bill Rollins, and two additional crew, which was Terry Lambert and John Bolter. They were all nice people, and the first two of them were DJs, as I was, and to be honest with you, most of the time we didn't know what we were doing, and we were living in what I think Dave Simpson called diabolical conditions. It was dirty, cold, wet and disgusting. But there you go. But when you're 19 or 20 years old, as I was, it's an adventure, and it's something new, it's something a bit different, and it's something mildly exciting. How do you argue with that? You can't really. And I went out there determined to do what I could. And in reality, we had some problems because we were able to broadcast for a few weeks, and then everything conked out, and that was where it kind of ended in the last episode. Okay, so going on from there, we were isolated aboard the tower for a couple more weeks before anything happened. And what then happened was that the boss, Eric Sullivan, turned up aboard Billy Bennett's little fishing boat, the Venus, and took people off. He took off Dave, he took off Bill, he took off John, and he took off Terry, and he asked me if I'd stay for a couple of weeks, and I said, yeah, no problem really. I didn't really have a problem with it at all. I was quite happy to stay for a couple of weeks, just to kind of man the fort on the basis that I got paid, and we'd see what happened next. And then a man came aboard, young chap, same as me, a bloke called Graham. I think his stage name or radio name was Graham London, and he was going to be a DJ as well. But he was going to be a tower sitter with me to make sure that nobody else came aboard. Although I have to tell you, knowing some of the people involved in the pirate radio station business, if some of those people had been determined, they would have been aboard. Trust me on this one. Okay, so there you go. So we were left sitting there aboard Sunkhead Tower, just the two of us. I think we had enough water, I think we had enough grub, but that was all we had, and we were there for another couple of weeks. It's quite a strange thing to be sitting out in the middle of the North Sea for a couple of weeks with just one person for company. Graham was a reasonably interesting bloke, really. He'd had an interesting start to his life, as I think I had, and he'd been out to Australia. He'd been out on something I think called the Big Brother scheme, and that had taken him out there, given him a job, and I think he hated it. And when he came back, he got in with Tara, and here he was. So he told me a bit about that. We had a few reasonably good conversations, but like any 19 or 20-year-olds, we really didn't have a great deal of conversation. So we spent most of the days in reasonable silence. We had a chat about a few things. I used to go up onto that round tower, observation tower, on top of the fort, and have a sit and watch the ships go by. There weren't many, but if there was some, at least it was a sign there was another human being on the planet. So that was kind of where we got to with that one. We had one edition of Playboy, which I won't go into any further, but that was what we had. I think we might have had two at one point, but I don't know. But we just sat there really, and we fed ourselves, and we didn't really do anything like keep fit or anything, but we fed ourselves. We had a cup of coffee and a natter. And one of the things that we did was got quite fed up with it all, and as you would imagine. And at one point we built a raft out of 2 oil drums, 50-gallon drums, and some odd timber. And eventually we launched that, but we decided we weren't going to go on board because we thought it looked like a recipe for getting drowned. So there you go, that floated off and we saw it no more. Don't know where it ended up. But no more to be done with that. And eventually, after a couple of weeks, Billy Bennett's boat Venus came out and took us off. Now, I don't remember, seriously, I don't remember whether anybody else came aboard. That's the honest truth. I don't remember whether anybody else came aboard the tower. I suspect that at that point they didn't, but I don't know. Okay, because it was all, I think, too exciting to actually get off the bloody thing, because we'd been out there for 6 or 8 weeks and we were bored rigid, I think, with the whole thing, and we wanted to actually go ashore. I was disgustingly filthy, dirty. My clothes were filthy dirty. And in the end, Eric decided to take me back to his house in Clacton-on-Sea, at which point I was compelled by his girlfriend, stroke wife, Anita, to actually take, I think, 2 or 3 baths before she decided that I was clean enough to get into one of her bedrooms and actually get in the bed and sleep, which was, I think, was an amazingly wonderful procedure. Bear in mind that was the first proper night's sleep I'd had for ages in clean linen, and I had a proper meal before I went to bed, and it was wonderful. So what happened after that? Well, I got paid, is one thing that's worth noting. I got paid less the cost of half of the 2 oil drums and the wood. And I got the huge total wage, I think net of about 35 quid, 33 quid, something like that. And there you have it. So not much. And I just was quite pleased to have it. And then we had a chat about what was going to happen next. Eric suggested that in the interim, before anything else happened aboard the fort, in the interim I record some music shows with Robin Garton, who had a studio down in Walton on the Naze, and I'd have been quite happy to do that, but then that never happened. I also learned a bit about what was going on with Tower Radio, which was that Eric had found himself a new business partner, a man called Peter Jeeves, who was a London-based guy, and he was going to revolutionise it all. It brought in loads of money and it was all go. And I kept abreast of what was happening just out of interest, and I kept in touch with Eric for several years afterwards. But in the ensuing weeks after I left the fort, Eric bought a small trawler called the Margie, and he paid 17 grand for that, which was quite a lot of money in the day. And he employed, I think his name was Keys Romer, who was the skipper, or one of the skippers, of Offshore 1, which was the Weissmuller service boat that actually handled the supplies for Radio London and Radio Caroline. So it was a pretty busy little boat. And he employed him, I think it was a £5 a day he paid him, or something, 35 quid a week, which was okay money back in the day, but he employed him. And at one point, poor old Keith got the boat trapped underneath Sunkhead Tower, and had to fight his way out, really, and lost his stern mast and all sorts. But there you go. But that's all kind of water under the tower, I suppose you would say. But everything went along, and I think they got a new transmitter, I'm not sure. They got one new generator, which wasn't man enough to do the job. And then they bought a new Onan generator, which I think got smashed up actually when they were hauling it aboard, and they had to take it away, get it fixed and bring it back. And I think the problem was that there was a lot of money being spent by Peter Jeeves in London, by Eric in Clacton and Harwich, and actually what happened is that they seriously did just run out of dosh. So nothing happened, and the guys were taken off, and it all kind of died. That is the last I know of what happened with Radio Tower. At that point, things changed a great deal. The government decided that it didn't like the idea of having the tower, or Sunkhead Tower, stuck out there 11 miles outside territorial waters, and sent the army to blow it up, which they did very effectively. All that was left was a couple of stumps, these two in fact, and I don't know if 60 years later they're still there or if they're not. I've no idea. Perhaps someone will know and will let me know. I'd be fascinated to hear from you. So there we are. That's the end of my little story of my experience aboard Radio Tower back in 1966. Looking back on it in the warm glow of history, I have to say that I enjoyed it. Looking back at what the real life experience was more like, I think it was dirty, messy and pretty squalid, but it was exciting. It was the kind of thing you can do and get away with when you're a kid, and I think it added a lot of experience to my life, some of which I didn't want to know, but there you go, but it was fun to do. Okay, what's going to happen next? Well, I'm going to continue doing some little stories about my life, and one of the things that I'd like to talk about is what happened to me not so many years ago, more like 30 years ago, when I had a life-changing, a genuinely life-changing experience. And that was when I had a heart attack. And it was one of the best things that's happened in my life. Okay, I'm Chris, this is the Old Geezer's Diary. This is the end of my exercise on Sunkhead Tower. And if you watched it and enjoyed it, get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. It's great to talk to you, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves.